Minister David Cameron has attacked what he calls a culture of entitlement in the welfare system. He's called for an overhaul of the system, which he says has led to millions of people, as he put it, sitting at home on welfare payments while others work hard and resent their privileges. Controversially, he also suggested that the current system encourages people to have children and not go to work. Let's hear a snippet of his speech.
I've already talked about how many people have to think very carefully about whether they can afford to have children and how many they can afford to have. But let's look at the signals that the welfare system sends out. If you're a single parent living outside London, if you've got 4 children, you're renting a house on housing benefit, then you can claim almost £25,000 a year. That is more than the average take-home pay of a farm worker and a nursery nurse put together. Quite simply, we've been encouraging working-age people to have children and not work when we should be enabling working-age people to have children and work.
Prime Minister David Cameron. Well, Deven Ghelani is a senior researcher at the London-based think tank, the Centre for Social Justice, and Chris Wellings is head of policy at Save the Children UK. Deven Ghelani first. Is the Prime Minister right? Should the system be changed to discourage people on welfare from having large families?
I think he's absolutely right to raise the debate, and he's absolutely right to talk about questions that I think people across the country have been having for years now. And I think it's absolutely right that politicians catch up with that debate that's happening elsewhere. You know, people who are working hard are asking themselves that I'm working hard, and I don't. You know, I'm struggling to find a place to live in London. I'm struggling to bring up my children. And I think these are questions that they're asking, and it's absolutely right that politicians should have to ask them as well. So he's right to raise the debate, certainly.
But let me ask you specifically: should people on benefits be pressured to limit the size of their families?
It's not about pressure to limit family size. It's about creating a system whereby people on benefits face the same choices that people in work have to make.
Chris Wellings, what do you think about what the Prime Minister's been saying?
Before David Cameron came to office, he very clearly said that the test of a good society is whether we look after the most vulnerable. And I just think we have to be very careful with this agenda and very careful with some of the implications of the agenda. It's very easy to lapse into stereotypes. I mean, for example, we know that, in fact, most children in poverty in this country are in working households. We know that we've got a huge problem of people going out to work and then not being, because of extortionate childcare costs, able to make their family finances work. And I think we need to be very careful not to see a situation where more and more children finding their way into poverty because of these changes, because we know that poverty has such a profound impact on children's day-to-day lives, and we know that it really severely restricts their futures and their life chances.
But if we know that, then isn't it right that the Prime Minister is saying that the choices that people who are on low wages or on no wages at all should actually consider whether they have more children?
But we need to look at the agenda in the whole, don't we? I mean, we need to know that at the moment, according to the government's policies, more and more children are likely to fall into poverty because certain decisions have been made about austerity and about controlling the welfare budget. And the implication of those decisions is that more and more children will fall into poverty. Now, as a country, we can't carry on wasting the talents of children just because of where they're born or their family incomes. We need to put children first, and we need to say, look, these children deserve the experiences and the chances that any other child does. And of course we want to support families into work, but we need to give them the support to do that. So we need to recognise that we've got a real problem with low wages in this country. We need to make sure that it's a real route out of poverty and that actually you get more money if you are in work. We need to make sure that childcare costs don't cripple families.
Well, that is what the Prime Minister has always said, they need to make sure that we are creating a society where it's worth people's while to work. Deven Ghelani, do you not think, though, that the Prime Minister is implying that people are deliberately deciding to have more children when they can't afford to keep them?
Well, Chris is absolutely right when he says that the system should be about protecting the most vulnerable, and it should be about rewarding positive decisions like the decision to move into work. I don't think it's about criticising the decisions that people have made already. You know, people have grown up in a system through no fault of their own that have rather than work with positive choices in their life. Often, we've had a system that's engendered what I think is can be a dangerous culture of dependency at times, and I think this government's at least reforming some of the problems of the system through things like universal credit, just to make that step into work much easier. And I think he's right to ask questions about other sorts of choices as well.
But no nobody surely would argue that living on benefits is an easy option. It's not easy. It's not like there's lots and lots of money to be had on welfare payments. So why would anybody decide to have an extra child or more children in order to get extra benefits?
I think that if you look at what some of the choices that people make, I mean, I've met people who've talked to me. I've met young people, teenagers through charities that I've been to visit and talk to, and they've talked to me about some of the choices that they face, and they recognise the choice that actually my mum says that if I have a baby, then there's a choice there for me to get a house. So some of these choices are being communicated, and if you think about the family that's working, perhaps two parents, two children, working 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week between them, cleaning, doing whatever job they need to raise their two children in London and find a place to live, and they look across the street and see a family that with perhaps 4 children that isn't working and actually taking home more disposable income than they have left at the end of the day. I think that is the system that we have today, and I'm not sure whether the premise with which you started is correct. I think in some cases you can be
Chris
better.
Wellings, very briefly, we've got very little time.
I think we should make no mistake about it that life in poverty is incredibly hard for families. It has a very profound impact on children's experiences and on their chances. It's absolutely right to try and support families, to help them into work, to help them support their children as best they can. But we need to be very careful with the debate. We need to make sure it is about supporting families, and it doesn't just lapse into more and more children falling into poverty. Families getting poorer and poorer, and more children's lives